I look back at my Julliard days and I am horrified at myself for not going to more plays, because Julliard also had dance and drama. And I'm like, why did I not go see plays? And why did I not go to the dance shows? And why didn't I do this? I mean, I try not to be too hard on myself. But at the same time, I see that as a missed opportunity for, broadening the people I met. You don't do that when you're 18 and 19. You kind of stay in your lane and you're like overwhelmed. I remember the first time I played in Mr. Lowenthal's studio class was one of the scariest things ever. To get up and play for much worse than playing a concert. Get up and play for 30 pianists in a room. It was hell.
Hi, you're listening to Conversations with Musicians with Leah Roseman, which I hope inspires you through the personal stories of a fascinating diversity of musical guests. Michael Stephen Brown is both a fantastic pianist and composer, and in this episode, you'll be hearing some excerpts from his upcoming album, 12 Blocks, which is a very personal project for him of chamber music and solo piano pieces. You'll hear the stories and personal connections with each of these works that he's composed. He shared his experiences at several inspiring arts residencies, including living in Aaron Copland's house, unplugged from the internet, his close friendship with the late Shirley Perle, and his research into Felix Mendelssohn's relationship with Delphine von Schauroth and her compositions. We talked about the importance of removing the stigma from getting therapy and providing more affordable access to mental health support for those in the performing arts through his support of creative care, and his long-standing collaboration with cellist and comedian Nick Canellakis. You'll also be hearing a clip of one of their performances. At the core of this interview are Michael's broad interests and how he reflects his curiosity and love of storytelling in his creative work. There's lots more to this in-depth episode, and all the music you'll be hearing is composed by Michael. Have a look at the show notes for the links. Like all my episodes, you can watch this on my YouTube channel or listen to the podcast on many podcast platforms, and I've also linked the transcript. It's a joy to bring these inspiring episodes to you every week, and I do all the many jobs of research, production, and publicity. Have a look at the show notes of this episode, where you'll find all the links, including different ways to support this podcast. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for joining me here today.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
You are, I was going to say rare, but I think less rare now, that you're very active as both a composer and a pianist. And I was interested to learn that your very first piano teacher actually was also a composer and encouraged you as a young child to compose as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I began writing music from the very first day that I started learning the piano when I was 5, because my teacher on Long Island, Herbert Rothgarber, who was just a wonderfully warm and gracious and generous man, was a pianist and a composer, and he really encouraged me to look at music from both of those angles. So we would learn a 8-bar or 16-bar piece by Mozart or a minuet in G, and then I would write a kind of spin-off on my own to kind of understand the harmonic progression, even if it was 1 to 5 and 5 to 1. Those were my first little childhood compositions. But I have to say I'm very grateful to him, because now that I'm older and teaching myself, I can appreciate being exposed to that kind of thought that's not just all of this, but includes a kind of mental and broader engagement of the music itself, actually, what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into your current project, I just want to talk a little bit about your background. Like, it's interesting to me that when you went to Julliard as an undergrad, you were already doing a dual degree, composition and piano. That must have been a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. I admit it was a lot of work. But it was the sort of thing where I kind of just applied to all these schools for piano and composition, because you don't really know yourself when you're 17 years old and applying to colleges. And I thought, well, let's see what happens. I have no idea what's going to happen. But I got in for both areas, and we asked the school, can I do that? And they were like, yeah, sure, why not? So basically it was a lot of work, but I had kind of the same courses, but then I just had lessons. So I was studying with Jerome Lowenthal on the piano side, and I'd love to talk more about him, and Samuel Adler on the composition side. And so they actually kind of fit really brilliantly together. I really sometimes when Dr. Adler, my composition teacher, if I wasn't always prepared writing a whole new string quartet every week, I would take a piano piece to him and say, hey, I learned Copland's piano sonata. Can I play it for you? Can we analyze it? And he studied with Aaron Copland, so it was kind of thrilling for me to experience that from his, compositional point of view, not just playing it for a pianist.
Yeah. And one of your many chamber music albums, you're on this album of Samuel Adler's music and also piano solo stuff. So was that your initiative to get that project together?
Yeah, I've been playing. I mean, he's been a very important mentor and guide and teacher in my life for such a long time. I've been playing his music since I was a student. He's written 2 piano pieces for me. One is called Fantasy. This was a while ago. And then I've just commissioned another one from him that he completed in the spring, around the time of his 97th birthday. So, yeah, I love his music and I love his spirit and always engaging with him. So I'll continue to play and champion his music.
That's wonderful to hear he's still writing. That's
Yeah.
super inspiring. So Jerome Lowenthal, I know that connects with your exciting new set of albums coming out. So do you want to just dig into that?
Absolutely. So, Mr. Lowenthal, as I'll forever call him, or Jerry, known to some, is a legendary pianist and incredible intellect and scholar and of French poetry and just knows everything. And during the pandemic, he and his partner, great pianist Ursula Oppens, they live almost 13 blocks away from each other in Manhattan. And of course, with social distancing, they formed a pod and they would walk every day to visit each other. And Jerry recalls, I asked him, what did you do on your walks to visit Ursula? And he says, well, I would sort of go through my memory of French poetry or poetry that is important to me. I would sort of mumble to myself from memory. So I got very excited about this idea of putting it into a piece and writing them a piece, which I call 12 Blocks, which is written for them and their relationship. It's a 1 piano 4 hands piece with narration. So there are spoken moments where each of them recite poetry, the poems that Jerry liked to recite on the walk, to each other. And they switch parts in the middle. So who is ever playing the primo part then becomes playing the secondo part in the middle through. And they've played this piece all over the world, and it's coming out on my new album in February 2026, which is also called 12 Blocks. So they kind of live more like 13 blocks away, but the number 13 has these kind of negative connotations, so I rounded down.
The thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness, but still will keep a bower quiet for us, and a sleep full of sweet dreams and health and quiet breathing.
And I understand every work on this program has some kind of narrative, some kind of story. Can you share some more? And we're going to be sharing clips of some of that music.
Yes, absolutely. So I've already discussed 12 Blocks and how it's written for these 2 wonderful, legendary people who visit each other. I've got a piece for clarinetist and conductor Osmo Vänskä, who is the former Minnesota Orchestra music director, and his wife, Erin Keefe, who's a violinist. They had commissioned a piece for clarinet and violin from me because they were doing a whole project of putting together commissions of music that they can play together for that combination of instruments. And I thought that I would put some of their personalities into the piece and write it about their relationship. So it's somewhat more broadly about relationships between 2 people in general than specific to them. But Erin is a little bit more of the rough, brutal type, and I say it with love. And Osmo is the sweeter one, and she'll agree with me on this. So there's a movement called the argument, where the 2 kind of fight with each other, and the violin has the last word. That piece is called Relationship. So it's again another piece for a couple, and I've been fortunate they've been playing that around as well. And what else is on the program? Then we have three solo piano pieces that I play myself. One is called Four Lakes for Children, which I wrote in the summer of 2024 at the Yaddo artist residency in Saratoga, New York, which is a phenomenal, very special place on planet Earth for artists, not just musicians. A lot of writers and filmmakers and visual artists go there as well to kind of disconnect and live in the woods in their own cabins and get mosquito bites, but they can work on their artistic projects. So I went there actually for another project called the Carnival of Endangered Wonders, which we can talk about later. But while I was there were these four lakes on the property. And the story of Yaddo is the founders, the Trask family, all four of their children died before the age of 10, tragically, and didn't get to grow up, didn't get to have fully formed personalities. And each one of these four beautiful lakes on the property are named for each one of their children. So there's Lake Allen, Lake Spencer, Christina, Katrina. And I thought, as I walked around these lakes every day, I could imagine their personality, kind of invent their personality, what would have happened had they lived past, in some cases, infancy. So that became a kind of poignant Yaddo-inspired piano piece that'll be on the recording. And I have another piece called Breakup Etude for the Right Hand Alone, which is an older piece, but it's inspired by, as the title says, a breakup in my life, but also a hand injury that I was dealing with during the pandemic. And so it's a real virtuoso piece for right hand alone with spoken interjections. It's began maybe in a kind of grieving way, but now it's kind of a comic piece, I think, when you have space. And I have a short encore-style piece called Poor Angeline, who's actually my fiancée that I've written. Also on the recording, you can view it as a concert if you like, but it's a recording. I have two pieces with voice. The first one is a song cycle called Love's Lives Lost, and it's written for great American soprano, long-time friend of mine, Susanna Phillips, who is a fantastic American soprano. And it's based on text from a friend of mine named Evan Shinners, who is also a pianist from Julliard, who goes by the alias WTF Bach, and is an amazing person. So I commissioned him to write text about two former lovers, essentially, who meet later in life and don't connect in any way. They don't know anything about each other anymore except for partnering and putting on this song cycle. So that's the basis for that. And that was premiered in Calgary in 2023. And I can go more in depth about it. It's 8 movements. It's inspired by Schumann's Frau Liebe und Leben, which was a piece that Susanna and I studied and worked on at Marlborough together, the Marlborough Music Festival. I commissioned these poems from Evan Shinners to illustrate how two people who used to be in each other's lives, whether they're former lovers or former friends, they go off on different paths. One person goes one way, moves away, one person goes to another place, they lose touch for, let's say, many years. They come back together, and yet this chemistry still lingers, even if they know nothing about each other. It's just even unspoken, and you can't even put it into words. And that's something that I feel with Susanna very strongly, who's singing the cycle. So the poems reflect this concept that yet she and I really don't know much about each other anymore, but we can still connect through music. It's our shared language. It's not exactly, the daily text updates, but it's so the poems that he wrote, Eben's poems, all reflect that concept and that spirit of reconnection, nostalgia, and yet it kind of simultaneously pays homage to a past, but then also to this idea that two people have different recollections of their past. And there's often like you make of the past what you will, and you create your own narrative. So it's about that reconnection. There's some funny songs in it. There's one called Kalamazoo, because Susanna and I were once in Kalamazoo, and it's a sort of little romp about you're stuck in Kalamazoo, what's there to do in Kalamazoo. And the final piece on the recording is the newest of pieces. It's called Pas de Trois, which means steps for three, and it's actually a dance, just like a pas de deux, and it's commissioned by the Spa Trio, which is Susanna Phillips again, and the violist Paul Neubauer and pianist Anne-Marie McDermott. I commissioned this piece for Anne-Marie's festival in the Ocean Reef Festival in Florida, which is in the Keys, right by Key Largo, and it was premiered in January. And it's a set of 3 songs. Each one is about their instrument type. The first one is text by D.H. Lawrence called Piano, which is a very nostalgic poem, harkening back to someone's youth, missing youth, and reminiscing about that. The second poem is called The Violist, and I was looking for a poem that described an arrogant violist because I wanted Paul Neubauer, who always loves to play, always loves for other people to play a little softer than maybe you think, and he loves to kind of shine in the spotlight, and we always joke around about that. I play a lot with Paul at the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. He's one of my favorite people, but I had to kind of poke fun of him and his desire as a violist to kind of stand in front of the ensemble at all times. So I wrote that poem myself because I couldn't find a poem that worked. So I wrote that poem called The Violist, and Paul loves it.
A violist strolled down the quiet lane. His viola in hand, he grinned in vain. He played for the trees, the birds in flight.
And the final song is Soprano. That's the name of the poem by Rita Dove. And it's a very beautiful, again, nostalgic poem about a soprano and the sound that she makes. And Susanna is so beautiful throughout the whole thing. So it's been thrilling to have them record it and tour it around.
Yeah. I know that you read a lot and you're really into literature, so it seems like the narrative must help you as a composer.
I've always found that being inspired by a poem, whether setting the text or just using it as a starting place for inspiration, I've been doing that for a while, gives me a starting place. It grounds me. It gives me something, I guess, abstract, because this is all subjective and abstract, to work with as a composer. But I also have written many pieces that don't do that, and it just depends on where I am. But I'm more and more, as you can see, I guess the through line of this album is personal relationships. It's stories from my life that instead of writing an autobiography, it comes out this way.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you slammed your left hand in the car door, that must have been so brutal and scary.
Yeah, it was brutal and scary, that both of those words. Yeah, because it was pandemic times, so all the concerts were canceled anyway. And the one thing that I was really looking forward to every day was practicing and learning pieces and writing pieces. And I found that was giving me a lot of joy and solace during that very difficult time. And I couldn't do that with both hands for 3 months. And it was one of these injuries where I thought, okay, well, maybe in 5 days it'll be better. But it didn't get better. But then finally it got better. And I learned that it was, I had I tore a tendon. So I learned that, and that just needed time to heal, and it's healed perfectly, and there are no issues there. But, I'm not saying I'm glad it happened, but it certainly opened, when something like that happens, it opens up, another avenue. And I wrote that piece, the Breakup Etude, for right hand alone, and I studied other pieces for right hand alone, and so I kept making art in other ways.
And most of that one-handed repertoire is for left hand alone, for pianists.
Yeah, that was also the unfortunate thing, because I was looking up pieces to play, and basically there's hundreds for left hand alone and like 6 for right hand alone, or 10. And I was like, well, that's a little bit imbalanced. So I wrote one myself. I tried to learn this Alcon piece, but it was just too hard.
Now, this year, you're a McDowell Fellow, 2025. So where and when? What does that look like?
So I went already to McDowell, which is another artist retreat like Yaddo. It's in Peterborough, New Hampshire. I went in February for the month of 2025. And it was great. They gave me a cabin in the woods, and a lot of great people had been in that cabin. There are these ledgers. You can see all the people that had been there. People like Ned Rorem and Aaron Copland and Ellen Zwilich, and I think Ruth Crawford Seeger was in my cabin in the 20s. It was over 100 years of people that had been living and working and writing, and a lot of composers in this cabin. It was a thrilling place to go work on different projects. I spent most of my time writing this Carnival of Endangered Wonders, which is I would say, my biggest project at the moment. It's a co-commission for 4 organizations, and I'm happy to talk in depth about it if you'd like, if this is the moment. Or I'd just say one more thing about McDowell, because it's a place where you go and you're isolated in the woods in the middle of winter, and it was all frozen over, and it's, the conditions for serious work is nothing else to do but work. But then you go for breakfast and you go for dinner, and you can mix and talk to the other writers and filmmakers, and I have to say that is where a lot of the magic happens. I have to say, a lot of my process with my piece, I discussed my work with poets, and different people were like, oh, have you considered this animal? Have you thought about... I wrote a poem about the cassowary, this vicious Western Australian bird. You should read my poem. So then I did, and now I'm putting that in my piece. So that kind of genre, cross-pollination for art is something I love and need, and I would say McDowell and Yaddo were both perfect for that, to kind of let an idea marinate and not just kind of stressfully meet a deadline.
So the subtitle is a zoological fantasy, and it's for large-scale chamber ensemble?
Mm-hmm. It's a piece for the exact same combination of instruments as Saint-Saëns' Carnival of the Animals, which is 2 pianos, string, quintet, flute, clarinet, and percussion. So 10 players, and Saint-Saëns actually uses zoological fantasy as his subtitle as well, because I have the manuscript, but somehow in the last 100+ years that has gotten swept away. People know it as the Carnival of the Animals. So, but I like that subtitle, a zoological fantasy, and I'm put it back in mine if people have the print, space.
So you'll be recording this?
Yeah, so actually come April 2026, the premiere will take place in Sarasota, Florida, at a festival called La Musica, which is run by artistic director Wu Han, who also directs the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. And we're going to do it there in an aquarium with some of the animals behind us, it'll be visible, like manatees, which should be super, super cool. Because the piece is basically, instead of using the swan and the elephant like Saint-Saëns, I have manatees and blue whales and axolotls and sawfish and cassowaries and Amur leopards. I have endangered species that I've come up with a list. Animals that I've either encountered in my journey as a traveling musician, or things I've read about, or from a poet at McDowell, things that really inspired me. And my piece tells a story of a 24-hour kind of zoological journey, as if you start at 6 a.m. in the jungle in Borneo with the orangutans, and you wind up in 6 a.m. in the rainforest in Puerto Rico with the call of the parrot. So the piece is not 24 hours long, but it goes around the world as if you experience, a day in the life of these endangered animals. So it's it's a piece that can be for children, for adults, for a whole mix of people.
Are you thinking of doing any multimedia, like with projected images when you play it live?
This has been discussed and not decided upon just yet, but it's in the works. Yes, we're thinking about some graphics and some multimedia as well.
That's great.
And definitely some at least some visuals in the program that people can take with them. And we're working with some local artists and aquariums. So the idea is to make this not just a piece for a concert hall, but something that can be a different experience, and could be a companion piece to the Saint-Saëns. So they can both be done in the same program. And we have a lineup of 4, I think, performances in the spring with Sarasota and Palm Beach, Florida, as another co-commissioner. Music at Menlo in California, and Kansas City Friends of Music will be doing it this summer, and New York the following season.
It's obviously, it was an inspiration for you to pair it with the Saint-Saëns, but it's good strategy marketing-wise, because people know that piece and they'll come hear it.
Well, I hope so. This was my idea from the start, which is I played as a pianist the Saint-Saëns a number of times, and it's such a great piece. It's such an unusual piece. I don't know any other piece for that combination of instruments. You have to get 2 pianos, which is already something that a presenting organization, most of them don't have 2 wonderful pianos. So you already have to do that. You have to get strings, flute, clarinet, and percussion, and then that's the only piece you can do, basically. So I thought that would be a kind of fun idea to kind of reimagine, but in my own way, in my own voice.
Yeah. When you mentioned the program, like here in Ottawa, it's digital programs only, which I don't like, but they really moved away from any paper programs. Do you find most places you're playing, there's still paper printed programs?
I would say most places I'm playing have paper programs. I have seen places that have digital programs. I've not seen people be thrilled about that, or even, I don't like to have my phone scanning. When I attend a concert, it's scanning a QR code and just sitting and looking at my phone. Yeah. I feel like a concert is a time to not look at your phone and turn your phone off and just be present where you are. So, yeah, I wonder what will happen with all that. I was not aware.
Yeah, the argument is you're not wasting paper, which I get. And I was thinking for your program, it would be good to have sort of a mini website with all those images, and like I could see where it could exist online as a enhanced experience. But I was just curious about that.
Yes, I think that will. We're going to do that. I'm going to create like a website or a Substack or something for this.
Yeah. So if we could just go backwards a little bit in your career. So I understand Andràs Schiff was a mentor who really helped you, like with your first major international tour.
Yes, he was just a mensch. What can I say? He's a great artist, and I used to be going to his concerts, all the time in New York City, and hearing him play the complete Bach was, transformative for me. And through different ways, I got to meet him and kept meeting him and played for him a few times. And he started this thing in Europe. Now it's probably more than 10 years old, called Building Bridges, where he would choose a couple of pianists every year and help them get some concerts. And that was really great. I think one year I played 8 or so recitals in Europe under his umbrella, and that was a great thing. Made nice connections for me.
Did he advise you in terms of programming at that point in your career?
A little bit, yes. He was supportive of my compositions. I played him one of my pieces. He thought playing my music on my programs was a good thing to do, and I think he did have. I know where his true spirit in music lies. It tends to be in more of the Germanic side, so we kind of veered in that direction with Beethoven, Eroica Variations, and pieces along that vein. But he was open-minded, and I appreciated that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I believe you have a new album coming out with music of Delphine von Schauroth.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's a kind of a neat story with Mendelssohn, Felix Mendelssohn, if you want to tell that.
Absolutely, yes. So I've been kind of a Mendelssohn junkie, Mendelssohn addict for a long time, and I just adore everything about Mendelssohn, and I feel a real connection to him as a composer. Played a lot of his music, a lot of his chamber music, and in preparing all this Mendelssohn, like the Rondo Capriccioso and first piano concerto, I kept seeing the name Delphine von Schauroth in various things. Her name is listed above the Rondo Capriccioso as a dedicatee, and I was just curious who she was, and I started researching her a couple of years ago and realized I wasn't getting very far. There was not much information written about her. It was all kind of murky and unfinished, it seemed. But I did find one piece of hers online, Opus 18, Songs Without Words, that were composed for Mendelssohn. And I thought they were just beautiful and worthy of pairing with Felix Mendelssohn's work. So that's what I've been doing a lot on recital programs. I play her pieces. They were written, they met briefly. I'll just tell the quick overview about who she was. She was a wealthy young lady who was a phenomenal pianist. Mendelssohn was very taken with her fast fingers. When she was 11 years old, she played for him and he was 16. And then they met again when she was 16 and he was 21. And he was still blown away by her playing, but also was quite taken with her beauty. And they began writing songs without words for each other. Basically, she would write in his notebook and he would write in her notebook, and it was this musical love exchange. And Mendelssohn even proposed marriage to her mother, but her mother was unsure of letting her daughter marry a traveling musician. She wanted her daughter to marry a doctor or a lawyer. And Felix Mendelssohn was pretty heartbroken about it. He forbade his friends from uttering the name Delphine von Schauroth the rest of his short life. And that's another reason why she's not mentioned a lot, and there isn't much about her. But apparently she was a phenomenal pianist. A lot of people compare her to Clara Schumann in Europe at the time, but married 3 times and did not have the opportunities or the performing career that a man would have at that time. And I think that's very sad, but I think her music is absolutely wonderful, and I've been trying to find more of it. And I've succeeded in finding a few other short pieces from German libraries, but not that much.
I thought I'd heard you say, Michael, in another interview about the story that Mendelssohn had written a piece for her that she didn't receive or something. There was some sort of...
Yes, there was a Venetian gondola song, the G minor, Songs Without Words of Mendelssohn, that he had written and mailed to her as a showing of love, and I believe she didn't. If the story is true, she never got the letter, and she married someone else.
Okay.
So that's a pretty dramatic showing of love, and could you just imagine receiving a Mendelssohn, handwritten? I can't. It's such an amazing thing.
Hi, just a really quick break from the episode. I wanted to let you know about some other episodes I've linked directly to this one in the show notes, which I think may interest you, with Thomas Cabanis, Anthony Brandt, Julia McLean, the Chang Square Duo, and Martha M. Toll. In the show notes, you'll also find a link to sign up for my newsletter, where you'll get exclusive information about upcoming guests, a link for my Ko-fi page to support this project directly, where you can buy me one coffee or every month, and my podcast merchandise store with a design commission from artist Steffi Kelly. You can also review this podcast, share it with your friends, and follow on your podcast app, YouTube, and social media. All this helps spread the word. Thanks. Now, back to my conversation with Michael. I always love those Mendelssohn songs without words. Really beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Aaron Copland residency, where you wrote your piano concerto, which is also coming out, because I understand you said, I don't want any internet in this house while I'm here.
Yes. Yes. So the Copland house is the house where Aaron Copland lived from 1960 to 1990, when he died. And it's pretty much unchanged. It's in upstate New York, in Peekskill, New York, which is about an hour north of New York City. And it's a very beautiful spot, a lot of nature, a lot of trees and birds, and a yard to walk around. I think it's actually like a historic landmark now and can't be touched or torn down. Speaking of which, the house has not been updated since Copland lived there, so it's quite an outdated house. But you walk in there and you feel transported into like another time, and it feels like the time where Copland lived there. There's a big wooden, barn-style rustic desk that he had built where he would put his scores on. There's a music room, which is great and has a fantastic library of recordings of American music. They have a lot of CDs. It's a great place to listen to CDs and a CD player because it's all functioning in that way. And you sleep in his bed and you cook meals in his kitchen, and you can see the manuscript of Fanfare for the Common Man on the wall, and nobody bothers you. And so I went there because you apply to the Copland House as a residency, and I got selected. I think they select like basically one a month, about 12 a year. And people go and rotate and live in isolation. So it's different than McDowell and Yaddo because you don't have a community to have dinner with or breakfast with. You're not sharing ideas. You're literally alone in the woods. And you have to make your own meals and your own cleanup, So it's a totally different thing, but it's a different experience, but it's also wonderful and was very creative. And it was where I was really studying Beethoven and Copland's works, and came up with this idea to write a sort of Beethoven classical concerto inspired piano concerto that I could use as a vehicle for myself to play with string orchestras. And as you said, I had them remove the Wi-Fi because I was worried about going on Netflix and Facebook and squandering the opportunity of being there. And I wanted to feel, look, I'm no martyr about technology, that I'm not so great. I have my pitfalls too with technology. But at this moment in my life, I thought it was very important to really try to be there, not squander this special opportunity, and get rid of the Wi-Fi and just be present and read. And so instead of scrolling, I was reading, and I was reading whatever books he had there. I assume they were his books.
And his piano?
And no, it had a different piano. It was like his piano. It was a Baldwin 7-foot. It was a nice piano, but they said it wasn't his piano.
So I'm assuming when you're composing, you're mostly at the piano with some manuscript paper, and then you go over to your computer. How does that work?
That's how I do it. Yeah. I'm usually at the piano with manuscript paper. I've been enjoying more and more sketching a lot by hand at the piano, and then I'll take it to the computer and work like that. That's usually the way I do it. They usually go back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I noticed, you're an artist ambassador for Creative Care to help afford mental health care. So it's helping to reduce the stigma, the need for mental health care, and the fact that it's very expensive, especially for artists to afford.
Yeah, I got involved with this organization a couple years ago. They're all classical music lovers. They go to lots of concerts at the Met Opera and Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, and they introduced themselves to me as this startup group to help artists, not just musicians, but dancers and all types of different artists particularly in their 20s, that would like therapy or mental health professionals and basically can't afford it because it's so expensive if you don't have it covered. I mean, I didn't have it covered and for myself. And so what their mission is, and I believe in it incredibly, is that they're fundraising to kind of bridge the gap, meaning that they can help if therapy costs $300 an hour, they can pitch in $250, and someone would pay like a copay. And that has grown unbelievably in the last couple of years. They started out kind of as an idea, but I've done benefit concerts for them where all the proceeds go to their organization. And they're doing a wonderful thing. I think it's growing each year, and I'm happy to support it in however I can.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I donate to a similar organization in Canada. And, I live, we have socialized medical care, unlike you guys in Canada, but mental health care is not included. I mean, if you have serious psychiatric problems, that's different. But for your average person, if you're depressed or anxious or whatever, you can't access, it's not paid for as part of medical care. It's always separate, which is, I know in some European countries, that's not the case, for example.
And also just, it's not something, I went to Julliard and they did have therapists if you wanted it. But at that time, it was like, oh, you're going to do that? Something's wrong with you. Mm. And it's not normalized to have therapy or any kind of mental health work or kind of any kind of body or spiritual work in school. It's just not in the curriculum. It's an after school thing. And I've been removed from, school for a long time now. But if I were a person making decisions about what kind of stuff to include in a curriculum, I mean, I would talk about nerves when you play a concert or the stress of traveling. I would put some, the doubts you have. I would find a way to create a course or a mental health where people can actually share experiences and you talk on a kind of practical, real level. In addition to, hours of this, which is important, of course. I think there are breathing classes and lots of different ways that people can enhance their art form and their well-being as people, because it's all interconnected. So I support what they're doing, and I think it's going well, and I hope that they can keep building and gaining momentum and normalizing these types of conversations for musicians and artists.
Yeah, I was looking at their website, so they are looking for more artist ambassadors. If anyone listening is interested, they should.
Yeah, and it would be great. Maybe in this segment we can share this with them.
Yeah, it's a clip or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you mentioned nerves and the stress of traveling. Two things I often bring up with performers. Has that changed for you over time? I mean, they're separate issues. What do you want to speak to first?
Has it changed? I would say the nerves are always there, even though I've done it before. I've played a concert before and I've survived it and I've gone back to the hotel or my house or whatever. But it's there. It's like a learned behavior, nerves. It's like concert, cold hands, nerves. Even if it doesn't make any sense. Even if I know people that come to watch me are not out to get me and they're there to have a good time. And at the end of the day, it'll be fine. So they're irrational, but they're there. They're worse if it's something that's new or I haven't played a lot. I also get weirdly very nervous when I'm watching my own pieces and not performing. And in some ways, I get more nervous just sitting in the audience watching a piece of mine. It's like watching what I would imagine a birth of something, and I'm like, this is all on me if this works out. It feels like a lot of pressure. And in terms of how do I deal with that, I would say when you keep doing it for a while, you gain a little bit more of a perspective and a little bit more of you keep learning about yourself in terms of what works and what doesn't work, in terms of what you need on a concert day. I always need a 30-minute nap, and I'd like to be alone. I don't like to take care of other people's needs leading up to the concert. And you kind of learn about that. In terms of traveling, that also just takes experience because that can be exhausting. A lot of things can go wrong, and you just have to keep learning what works for you. You talk to performers, and do they say different things? They must say different.
It's different. Yeah, and I don't, we don't just have classical musicians on the podcast. So it's
Right.
interesting talking to people, who are in the folk realm. And I remember it came up like if people, you're being billeted because, there's not the budget for a hotel, but then do you engage, like that takes emotional energy. You want to give back to the people who are hosting you, but then you have to save. It's always about engaging with fans, engaging with your public and boundaries and learning what works. I mean, for me, playing in an orchestra, we're a big family and friends with these people, but I've learned I can't just like be talking to people right before I go on stage about whatever, even though it could be very interesting or important because it takes away from my focus. So I kind of keep to myself, but it's interesting. You do master classes when you travel sometimes, right? But you don't have time to teach regularly, I imagine.
I teach a couple of people ad hoc regularly, but I'm not affiliated with any school university at the moment. Yeah, but I do a lot of master classes when I travel. Pretty much anywhere I go into a school and give a piano master class or a composition master class. And I like that. It's like being an uncle. You get to hear them suggest things and send them on their way. But I love teaching. I've done a lot of it in different festivals and programs, and I especially like coaching chamber music, and yeah, I've worked with young composers. So I hope to do a lot of that in my life.
I was curious, you sort of made reference to Julliard and that they had some counseling available, but there was a stigma. I mean, it's known as kind of a pressure cooker. Did it help you as a performer to also be in the composition stream in terms of having both identities?
Yes, I think having the perspective of mixing with composers as well as performers was helpful to me and got me out of the little tunnel world of which I was living in, and I imagine most performers live in when they go to a conservatory, especially when they're 18, 19, 20, and they're very young and probably don't know themselves very well yet, and they're learning. They're trying and experimenting, and I think that's great. But I think it gave me a a kind of broader perspective. I look back at my Juilliard days, and I am horrified at myself for not going to more plays because Juilliard also had dance and drama, and I'm like, why did I not go see plays, and why did I not go to the dance shows, and why didn't I do this? And I mean, I try not to be too hard on myself, but at the same time, I see that as a missed opportunity for even broadening the people I met or the friend group, or to try to, but you don't do that when you're 18 and 19. You kind of stay in your lane and you're like overwhelmed. I remember the first time I played in Mr. Lowenthal's studio class was one of the scariest things ever, to get up and play for much worse than playing a concert. Get up and play for 30 pianists in a room. It was hell. So, and then it got better over the years just by doing it, just by knowing that everyone's in the same boat or a similar boat, and it's nerve-wracking for everybody, and you're there to learn and grow, and that's what it is.
Do you often listen to archival recordings of concerts that you do?
The only reason I would listen to myself is if people send. Now everything is recorded and pretty much videoed, which is different than it used to be 15 years ago, especially with the video component. But now you go play, and then a video or an audio arrives in your inbox within 24 hours, and they say, "Please listen by this date, or it's going to be made public." Or listen to this recording. Is CMS of Lincoln Center always sends the recordings, so I have to go through them, and if you can request edits. So that would be the reason that I would listen. It would only be if I didn't want to allow something to be released. But it's not like I'm like, let's make a chicken dish and put on one of my recordings. I'd rather listen to someone else, So.
No, I was just curious in terms of perfectionism versus, we need attention to detail and how you deal with that. It's such high level playing.
Oh, well, I mean, when I'm preparing for, like, let's say a concert, I did a couple weeks ago all the 13 Fauré nocturnes in one concert, which was kind of an experience. I would be that the way I practice is I record one on my phone, I listen back, and I follow the score. I mean, it's one of the ways I practice, and I usually hate everything, and then but it's a starting place. So. I use that as part of my preparing process because I find that even when I click the red button on my phone, it makes me feel a little bit more like a concert simulator.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, now I can't stop and start. And now I actually have to play the piece from beginning to end. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your relationship with Nick Canellakis. Mm-hmm. You've put out a couple of wonderful recordings. Of course, you guys have your online, relationship with so many people have seen his reels. And also you've done these interviews with super famous musicians. Your friendship goes way back with him, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Nick is a great cellist, comedian. He's doing great as an influencer these days. And let's see, our relationship goes back to our days as students at the Ravinia Festival north of Chicago, 2008. At the Staines Institute. Nice shout out to the Staines Institute, a great organization, great people. And Nick and I were not exactly friends the first week we met. He was more abrasive. I was more shy and sweet. And over the years we met sort of in the middle and started doing lots of projects together, playing together. And he's been a supporter of my own music, which has been great. And then we started doing some comedy videos, and that took off in a certain way. And now we've been actually doing a hybrid multimedia live show, which is super cool, called Humor and Harmony, where we show some of our short comedic videos interspersed with our playing and our live banter, which encompasses our, raw, humorous, and often abrasive nature with each other.
Yeah. And I think, those reels, they really resonate with people because it's emotions we all feel. Mm-hmm. And I really think you're both great in them. But one of the ones I was enjoying, I found it really touching. You must know this one where he's in a therapy appointment and then the therapist says, what would you say to your younger self? Mm-hmm. You know that one?
Oh yes, yes. And actually, the younger self is my nephew August plays the voice of the younger self. Yes, that's one of Nick's. I would say I shouldn't speak for him, but that's one of his favorite videos that he's made, and because that is very true. And he's a person that has a lot of interests, and again, as a young person, has to choose. You spend so many hours, whether it's the cello or the piano, down one path, when you maybe could be broadening and doing a few different things. But yeah, so that's something that now he's really, I would say we both are in our lives kind of exploring, not just being instrumentalists, but seeing what other creative pursuits kind of work alongside that.
Yeah. And even what you were saying about at Julliard, if you had broadened out in terms of the kind of performances you're going to and the kind of people you're interacting with. I mean, I certainly, when I was in university, just felt like I never had enough time to practice. I never had time to finish all my assignments. Yeah. And it was like crazy how I didn't take advantage of the things I could have when I was there. Both universities I went to, but that's the thing, we can only live one life. And
but even if one has that realization later, it still can, you can use that as an opportunity to learn new things, and so we weren't reading Shakespeare when we were 18, or I wasn't, at least thoughtfully, and I was kind of rushing through the humanities class and kind of doing this, and just so I could do this and this and survive those two things. And now I've been, I have a book club and have a reading list, and I'm trying to, I don't want to say make up for lost time, but I'm trying to at least, broaden my perspective, not just look at life and music from the same lens all the time.
A few minutes ago, we were talking about cellist Nick Canellakis.
Yeah.
Do you want to, there's a couple of pieces, your Prelude and
yeah,
Dance.
Yeah.
we can include some of that for people to hear?
Sure, I would love to include. And I mean, Nick is a great cellist, I've written numerous pieces for him, actually a lot for cello and piano. So I'd be thrilled to include something and hear him play, and yeah, and we keep cooking up more projects for the future too. So. Yeah, I'll talk about my book club if I may for a second,
Please.
because it's it started with my very special friend, a kind of grandmother type in my life, a woman named Shirley Perle, who was married to a wonderful American composer, George Pearl, whose music I played a lot when I was a kid. I had met them because I was playing his music, and I put out an album of his works, and I really championed it for a while. And then he passed away in 2009, and I kept this friendship with her, and she passed away actually a year ago in September 2024 at the age of 100. But up until 100, I mean, she was in some ways my best friend. I mean, we were meeting weekly for tea and forehands. I mean, she was a pianist who went to Curtis, who studied with Rudolf Serkin, who did not have a performing career, but instead had a very rich life of, I would say, emotionally supporting great artists and pianists of the past, including Eugenia Stoneman and William Capell and Leonard Bernstein and a whole slew of important people. But she was in and of herself a very special, very smart person that had a whole, I would say, beautiful network of people that she mingled with, and was she was the glue. She was like the nucleus of this universe that was very special, which she invited me into this world where we would have New Year's Eve parties and tea parties and music salons. And so Shirley was a great avid reader and always thought that I could deepen that side of myself. And so we formed a book club in the last couple of years of her life with two friends of hers, one who is a retired English professor from Barnard, and his wife, who is an art historian. So the four of us would dive into classical literature, from Homer to Dante, and lots of Shakespeare and lots of different classics I never read. And we would Chaucer, we would sort of read and discuss and meet weekly. And that was very special, and gave me another, avenue to learn and deepen. And it was another connecting thing for me and Shirley. And she still looms very large in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So did she teach?
She taught some people piano, sort of beginner piano. She was just a real personality. Everybody knew Shirley in New York City. She would come to the concerts. She would look elegant with her hat and her outfit, and she was unbelievably smart and opinionated, and I would say in the most loving way, uncompromising and opinionated and difficult, but in such a honest and beautiful way. So when you got a compliment from Shirley, you knew it meant something. You know, I would, every time I play something in public, I go and play it for her first. Many times. That's the way I would prepare. I'd go play, Shirley, I'm going to play this. She's great, you know. And she'd sit there with the score, and she'd say things. But mainly the most inspiring thing that I took away from it was not so much her comments, but just the fact of having her presence. I could see she was zeroed in on what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious in terms of your creative process, do you improvise?
I improvise in the compositional when I compose, you know, as part of that process. But I wouldn't say I improvise in the sense that I would invite anyone to check it out and listen to it. It's not something that I feel confident in a way I want to express myself. But I do like doing it just for myself.
Yeah. So is it always kind of generative, like there's a point you're playing in order to generate stuff you want to write down?
Exactly. I usually do improvise and record those voice memos or whatever, and then I'll go back and they'll be like, oh, you know, that was total nonsense. But actually, at the end of that, there's something I can develop.
Yeah.
And I usually then, okay, I have a starting place. I'll go with that.
Yeah. You have this orchestral work, American Diaries. Mm-hmm. And I believe some of the writing in there is your grandfather's wartime diary. Do you want to speak about that project?
Sure. Yeah. My grandfather, Julius Brown, on my father's side, was a foot soldier in World War II. And we discovered at my family a couple of years ago this diary that we didn't know we had, which was his writings about the daily occurrences of being a foot soldier in World War II in Italy and North Africa and all these places. They had a grueling schedule. He writes about getting up at 4 and not sleeping and the gunfire going overhead and his literally best, you know, friends getting shot right in front of him and bullets whizzing by him. And I was commissioned by the New Haven Symphony to write an orchestral piece that included American texts as a sort of source of inspiration. That was in the idea. They were interested in the Amistad because the ship in the slave revolt docked in New Haven, so they wanted me to include something about that. And I then made the concept of the work a little more broad about American concepts in general, including texts by Langston Hughes and Maya Angelou and John Quincy Adams, who writes about the Amistad. And then I thought, after I had found this journal of my grandfather's, I would base a movement off of him as a kind of memorial. He passed away almost 20 years ago now, but I did know him pretty well, and it was something I wish I could have discussed with him, this journal.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot in there.
You were composer in residence with the New Haven Symphony?
Yeah, the New Haven Symphony was great. They had me for 3 seasons to write works for them and also develop this program for high school students where I would go to New Haven and teach composition for very talented. We had a small class, maybe 6 to 8 students, and they would write. They'd work on pieces all year to write, and then we put on performances at the end of the year. It was a string quartet one year and a woodwind quintet we did the second year. And just to get them to understand and how to write for instruments, we bring in special guests and different instrumentalists from the New Haven Symphony to demonstrate the clarinet and things like that.
When I was looking at your touring schedule, I noticed you're playing quite a bit with Pinchas Zukerman and Amanda Forsyth, and they were here, in Ottawa with me. So for people that don't know, I'm a member of the National Arts Centre Orchestra. So Pinchas was our music director for almost 20 years, and Amanda was our principal cellist and often played solo with us. So I have strong memories of touring Canada with him, playing many concertos, but especially Beethoven. And every night it would be different. He was always so inspired.
Yeah, I mean, Pinchas and Amanda are just two of the most inspiring people I know, not only musicians. I mean, I just took a trip with Pinchas to Lithuania. We played at the opening of this Jewish museum together. And on the plane, talking about Beethoven, he was literally showing me how he would conduct different passages of different symphonies and what to look for. And we talked a lot about Beethoven and his knowledge and what's inspired him, and from his friends like Zubin Mehta and Daniel Barenboim to reading he's done recently. So it was really inspiring, yeah. And also I heard him play Beethoven last year. The 10th Violin Sonata was incredible.
Have you yourself thought about conducting?
I only thought about it when I was talking to Pinchas about it, because he was showing me things about my arm. He was sort of giving me it was this overnight flight, and I was completely like sleep deprived. I was trying to sleep, but he somehow just wanted to give me a conducting lesson, somewhere over the Atlantic at 3 o'clock in the morning, or God knows what time it was. And he was like, "Wake up!" And he was showing me, this thing about dropping your arm, and I was like, "Pinchas, I'm trying to sleep." And it was really funny, but I do think about it because I do like it. But I haven't really dabbled in that world just yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, I could see that being in your future. Well, thanks so much for this today. Really appreciated it.
Thank you so much. It's been delightful to talk to you and to be on your show. It's a huge honor, so thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share this with your friends and check out episodes you may have missed at leahroseman.com. If you could buy me a coffee to support the series, that would be wonderful. I'm an independent podcaster and I really do need the help of my listeners. Keep in mind, I've also linked directly several episodes you'll find interesting in the show notes of this one. All the links are in the show notes. The podcast theme music was written by Nick Canellakis. Have a wonderful week.